The stars looked different out here, Captain Ryan Mitchell thought as he stood on the observation deck of the UHMS Compassion. After 20 years of service, he still found himself drawn to these quiet moments before a mission. The hospital ship glided through the darkness of space, her white hull gleaming under distant starlight. Red crosses, each one larger than a house, marked her sides. They glowed with their own light, visible for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Everyone in the galaxy knew what those symbols meant. Peace, healing, safety. Ryan was 52 years old with gray streaking through his dark hair. He had joined the medical corps straight out of academy, back when humanity was just beginning to reach out to the stars. He had seen colonies rise and fall. He had treated victims of space accidents, alien diseases, and natural disasters. But he had never fired a weapon in his life, and he was proud of that fact. The bridge door opened behind him. Dr. Lisa Brennan walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Ryan and stood beside him, looking out at the stars. Lisa was his chief medical officer and his closest friend. They had served together for 15 years. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Ryan smiled. Just thinking about the mission. Haven's Rest colony has been hit hard by this plague. The reports say hundreds are sick, maybe thousands. We have the vaccines, Lisa said. We have the treatment protocols. We'll save them, Ryan. That's what we do. The Compassion was the largest hospital ship in the human fleet. She carried 847 people, all of them doctors, nurses, medical technicians, and support staff. She had no weapons, no Marines, no fighters. Her only defense was the same defense that had protected medical ships for over 100 years. The law. The Galactic Medical Convention stated clearly that hospital ships were neutral. They could not be attacked. They could not be boarded without permission. They could travel through any space on missions of mercy. In the 112 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, that law had never been broken. Not once. Ryan finished his coffee and checked his watch. We drop out of faster than light in 6 hours. Get some rest, Lisa. It's going to be a long day once we reach Haven's Rest. She nodded and left him alone with the stars. Down in Ward 7, Nurse Amy Peterson was doing final checks on the medical supplies. Amy was 24 years old, and this was her first deep space assignment. She had grown up on Earth in a small town in Oregon, and had always dreamed of traveling to the stars. When she had told her parents she was joining the medical corps, her mother had cried with pride. Amy opened another container of vaccines and scanned them into the inventory system. Each vial represented a life saved, a family that would stay together. She thought about the colonists on Haven's Rest, waiting for help. They must be so scared, she thought, but we're coming. We're going to help them. Hey, Amy, a voice called out. It was Jake Collins, another nurse who had become her friend during the journey. Jake was 30 years old, originally from Texas, with an easy smile and a talent for making patients feel comfortable. Need any help with inventory? I'm almost done, Amy said. Just making sure everything is ready for when we arrive. Jake leaned against a storage locker. Did you hear about the warning from Earth Command? Amy looked up. What warning? Zirathi warships have been spotted in nearby systems. Captain Mitchell got the message a few hours ago. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. The Zirathi Collective was one of the more aggressive species in this part of the galaxy. They had been in territorial disputes with human colonies for the past 5 years. Nothing major, just border skirmishes and arguments over mining rights. But still, the thought of warships nearby made her nervous. Should we be worried? She asked. Jake shook his head. Nah, we're a hospital ship. We're protected by every treaty and law in the galaxy. The Zirathi might be aggressive, but they're not stupid. They know what happens to species that attack medical vessels. The entire galactic community would turn against them. Amy nodded, feeling reassured. Jake was right. They were safe. They had to be. On the bridge, Commander Kevin Hughes was monitoring the ship's systems. Kevin was the second in command, a career officer who had transferred from the regular fleet to medical service 10 years ago. He preferred the quiet life of a hospital ship to the tension of a warship. Out here, he could make a real difference. He could save lives instead of taking them. The communications console beeped. Kevin opened the channel and listened to the message from Earth Command. It was a Priority 1 warning, which was serious but not an emergency. Zerathi warships had been detected in 3 nearby systems. All human vessels were advised to proceed with caution. Kevin forwarded the message to Captain Mitchell and made a note in the ship's log. The Compassion was still hours away from Haven's Rest, and the colony was in desperate need. They couldn't turn back now. He looked at the navigation display. The ship was traveling at faster than light speed, moving through a dimension where normal space didn't exist. When they dropped back into normal space, they would be just outside Haven's Rest's solar system. From there, it was a short trip to the planet itself. Kevin thought about the colonists waiting below. Haven's Rest was a small world, home to about 50,000 people. Most of them were farmers and miners, trying to build a new life far from Earth. The plague had started 3 weeks ago, spread by some local bacteria that human immune systems couldn't fight. Without treatment, the mortality rate was nearly 40%. But with the vaccines and medicine the Compassion carried, they could reduce that to almost 0. Dropping to normal space in 5 minutes, the navigation officer announced. Kevin stood up and activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, prepare for transition to normal space. Medical teams, report to your stations. This is what we came here for, people. Let's get ready to save some lives. Throughout the ship, the crew moved into position. In the surgical theaters, doctors checked their equipment. In the recovery wards, nurses prepared beds for incoming patients. In the pharmacy, technicians loaded medication into transport containers. Amy finished her inventory and headed to her station in Ward 7. She passed by the pediatric wing and saw Jake helping to prepare beds for sick children. The thought of children suffering from the plague made her heart hurt, but she pushed the emotion aside. There would be time for feelings later. Right now, she needed to focus on doing her job. The ship shuddered slightly as it began the transition back to normal space. Amy grabbed a handrail to steady herself. The process only took a few seconds, but it always felt strange. Like falling and flying at the same time. Then the ship was back in normal space and the stars outside the windows stopped moving. Haven's Rest appeared on the view screens, a blue and green world that looked almost like Earth from this distance. On the bridge, Ryan Mitchell took his seat in the command chair. He had changed into his formal uniform for the arrival. Lisa stood beside him, watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. Begin broadcasting our medical beacon, Ryan ordered. All frequencies, all languages. I want everyone in this system to know exactly who we are and why we're here. Beacon active, the communications officer reported, broadcasting our status as a protected medical vessel under the Galactic Medical Convention. Medical identification codes are being transmitted on all standard channels. Ryan nodded. This was standard procedure. Any ship, station, or planet within range would receive their broadcasts and know that the Compassion was here on a mission of mercy. It was like putting up a giant sign that said, "Hospital ship, do not shoot." Any contacts on sensors? Ryan asked. Negative, sir, the tactical officer replied. The system appears clear. No other vessels detected. Good. Set course for Haven's Rest orbit. Let's get down there and start helping people. The Compassion moved forward, her engines pushing her toward the planet. In the medical bays, the crew waited. Down on Haven's Rest, the colonists watched the sky, hope rising in their hearts as the great white ship with the red crosses descended toward them. Amy stood at her station looking out the window at the planet below. Somewhere down there, people were sick and dying. But help had arrived. She felt a surge of pride. This was why she had joined the medical corps. This was why she had left Earth and traveled to the stars. To help people. To save lives. To make a difference. She thought about her mother back on Earth, probably worrying about her daughter so far from home. Amy made a mental note to send a message after the mission was complete. She would tell her mother about the people they had saved, about the good work they were doing out here on the frontier. The Compassion settled into orbit around Haven's Rest, and the crew prepared to begin their mission. In the cargo bays, transport shuttles were being loaded with medical supplies. Doctors reviewed treatment protocols. Nurses checked their equipment one final time. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge, watching his crew work with quiet pride. This was what humanity did best, he thought. When others were suffering, humans came to help. They brought medicine, hope, and healing. They asked for nothing, in return except the chance to make the galaxy a better place. "All teams ready, sir," Kevin reported. "We can begin landing operations on your command." The 3 Zirathi destroyers appeared on the tactical display like ghosts materializing from nothing. Ryan Mitchell felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his voice calm and steady. Panic was contagious on a ship, especially a ship full of medical personnel who had never seen combat. "Open all communication channels," Ryan ordered. "Broadcast our medical status on every frequency." Kevin Hughes worked the communications console himself, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "Channels open, sir. Broadcasting now." Ryan cleared his throat and spoke clearly into the microphone. "Zirathi vessels, this is Captain Ryan Mitchell of the United Human Medical Ship Compassion. We are a hospital ship on a humanitarian mission to Haven's Rest Colony. We are protected under the Galactic Medical Convention Article 4, Section 2. We are unarmed and pose no threat. Please acknowledge." The bridge fell silent. Everyone waited for a response. The Zirathi ships continued their approach, their wedge-shaped hulls cutting through space like knives. They were getting closer. Too close. Megan Price watched her tactical screen with growing concern. "Sir, they're not responding to our hails. Distance now 70,000 kilometers and closing." Lisa Brennan had come to the bridge when the alert sounded. She stood next to Ryan's chair, her face pale but composed. "Ryan, what's happening?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "But stay calm. We're protected by law. They can't touch us." Down in Ward 7, Amy Peterson heard the alert tone echo through the corridors. Her tablet computer showed an emergency notice. All personnel were ordered to remain at their stations. She looked at the other nurses around her. They all had the same question in their eyes. What was going on? Jake Collins appeared in the doorway. "Did you guys get the alert?" "Yeah," Amy said. "What's happening?" "Zirathi warships just showed up. The captain is talking to them now." Amy felt her stomach twist. "But we're a hospital ship. They can't attack us, right?" Jake nodded, but he looked uncertain. "Right, it's probably just a routine check or something. They'll verify our status and leave." On the bridge, Ryan tried again. "Zirathi vessels, please respond. We are a medical ship on a mission of mercy. We have the sick and injured aboard. We are protected by international law. Please acknowledge our transmission." This time there was a response. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a Zirathi commander. The alien had gray skin, 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. The universal translator turned his words into English. "Human vessel, you are in restricted Zirathi territory. No human ships are permitted in this sector." Ryan leaned forward. "Commander, with respect, this is not Zirathi territory. Haven's Rest is a human colony world in neutral space. We are here under medical protection laws. We have sick colonists below who need immediate treatment." The Zirathi commander's eyes narrowed. "Leave this system immediately. Commander, we cannot abandon these people. They will die without our help. Under the Galactic Medical Convention, we have the right to provide humanitarian assistance regardless of territorial claims." The Zirathi commander made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. Then the screen went black. "Sir, they've cut communication," Kevin said. Ryan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Something was very wrong here. "Continue broadcasting our medical status. Get me Earth Command on subspace. We need to report this situation." Megan Price's hands flew over her console. "Sir, they're powering up weapons." "That's impossible," Lisa said. "They can't fire on a hospital ship." But the tactical display didn't lie. The 3 Zirathi destroyers were charging their plasma torpedo launchers. Red warning lights began flashing across the bridge. Ryan made a decision. He hit the ship-wide intercom with his fist. "All hands, this is the captain. Brace for impact. Get to emergency stations now. This is not a drill." The words felt surreal coming out of his mouth. In 112 years, no species had ever attacked a human hospital ship. It simply didn't happen. It couldn't happen, but it was happening. Kevin looked at Ryan with wide eyes. "Sir, what do we do?" Ryan's mind raced. They had no weapons, no shield strong enough to stop military-grade plasma torpedoes. No way to fight back. Their only option was to run, but they couldn't outrun destroyers. Not with the Compassion's slow engines. Send an emergency distress call, Ryan said. All frequencies. Tell them we're under attack. Tell them! The first plasma torpedo hit the starboard side of the ship. The explosion was massive. It tore through 3 decks instantly, vaporizing metal and flesh alike. The ship lurched violently to the left. Ryan was thrown from his chair. Lisa crashed against a console. Warning alarms screamed throughout the bridge. In Ward 7, Amy was knocked off her feet by the impact. The lights went out, replaced by emergency red lighting. She heard screaming. All around her, equipment crashed to the floor. Medical supplies scattered everywhere. Everyone stay calm, she shouted, trying to be heard over the chaos. But her own voice was shaking with fear. A second torpedo hit, then a third. The Compassion shuddered like a dying animal. Somewhere in the distance, Amy heard the horrible sound of metal tearing apart. Emergency bulkheads were supposed to slam shut automatically, containing the damage. But something had gone wrong. The bulkheads weren't closing. Jake appeared beside her, blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. We need to evacuate this section. The hull has been breached on Deck 12. What about the patients? Amy asked. There were 20 people in Ward 7, most of them elderly colonists from a previous mission who were still recovering from surgery. We'll get them out. Come on. They moved quickly, helping patients into wheelchairs, supporting those who could walk. Amy's training took over, pushing down the terror that threatened to overwhelm her. One step at a time. One patient at a time, another explosion rocked the ship. This one was closer. Amy looked up and saw cracks spreading across the ceiling. The hull was failing. On the bridge, Ryan pulled himself back into his chair. His left arm was broken, hanging useless at his side. Kevin was slumped over his console, unconscious or worse. Megan Price was still at her station, tears streaming down her face as she worked her controls. Damage report, Ryan gasped. Starboard sections completely destroyed, Megan said, her voice breaking. Decks 8 through 14 are gone. We've lost power to the main engines. Life support is failing in multiple sections. Sir, we've lost over 100 people already. Lisa crawled across the tilting floor to reach Ryan. Her leg was injured, but she ignored the pain. Ryan, we need to evacuate. The ship is dying. Send the order, Ryan said. All hands abandon ship. Launch all escape pods. Lisa reached for the communications panel, but before she could activate it, a 4th torpedo struck the bridge directly. The explosion was instant and complete. Captain Ryan Mitchell, Dr. Lisa Brennan, Commander Kevin Hughes, and everyone else on the bridge died without time to scream. The entire front section of the Compassion tore away from the rest of the ship, tumbling into space, trailing fire and debris. In the pediatric wing, Jake Collins had just finished loading 30 children into an escape pod. The youngest was only 3 years old, crying for her mother. Jake climbed in with them and slammed the hatch shut. He hit the launch button. The pod shot away from the dying ship, its small rockets firing to put distance between them and the ongoing attack. Through the pod's small window, Jake watched the Compassion break apart. His ship, his home for the past 2 years, the place where he had saved lives and made friends. It was dying, torn to pieces by plasma fire. Amy was still in the corridor when the hull finally gave way. She felt the air being sucked out around her. People were screaming, being pulled toward the breach. She grabbed onto a support beam and held on with all her strength. Her lungs were burning. She couldn't breathe. The cold of space was seeping in, freezing everything it touched. A hand grabbed her arm. It was Lieutenant Danny Wright, one of the few security officers aboard the Compassion. He pulled her toward an emergency locker and shoved her inside. The locker was actually a miniature escape pod, barely large enough for 2 people. Danny sealed the door and hit the emergency launch. The locker shot away from the ship just as another section exploded. Through the tiny window, Amy watched the Compassion die. The beautiful white ship with the red crosses. The ship that had carried hope and healing to dozens of worlds. It was coming apart, piece by piece, section by section. The Zarathi destroyers circled the wreckage like sharks, firing again and again. They showed no mercy. They wanted to make sure nothing survived. Amy couldn't look away. She watched escape pods being destroyed by plasma fire. She watched sections of the ship that still held people explode into clouds of debris. She watched her friends, her colleagues, her mentors die in the cold vacuum of space. The attack lasted 8 minutes. 8 minutes of systematic destruction. When it was finally over, the UHMS Compassion was gone. Where the hospital ship had been, there was now only wreckage. Twisted metal, frozen bodies, and scattered medical supplies drifted through space like a graveyard. The Zirathi destroyers scanned the debris field once more, confirming their kill. Then they activated their cloaking devices and vanished, leaving nothing behind but death and silence. Amy pressed her face against the window of the tiny escape pod and... The automated recording drones had captured everything. They were small devices, no bigger than a basketball, scattered throughout human space to monitor traffic and collect data. One had been positioned near Haven's Rest, quietly observing and recording like it did every day. It had recorded the arrival of the UHMS Compassion. It had recorded the appearance of the Zirathi destroyers, and it had recorded every second of the 8-minute attack that destroyed the hospital ship. The footage was crystal clear. There could be no doubt, no confusion, no room for lies. The drone transmitted its data through the subspace network, as it was programmed to do. The information traveled faster than light, jumping from relay station to relay station across hundreds of light years. 6 hours after the attack, the footage reached Earth Command headquarters in Geneva. Admiral Patricia Lawson was in her office when the alert came through. She was 63 years old, a veteran of 38 years in the United Earth Defense Force. She had seen war. She had seen disasters. She had seen things that gave her nightmares. But nothing had prepared her for what she was about to watch. Her assistant, a young officer named Lieutenant Chris Morgan, brought her the data chip with trembling hands. "Ma'am, you need to see this. It's from Haven's Rest." Patricia inserted the chip and watched the footage on her personal screen. The first few seconds showed the Compassion in orbit, peaceful and beautiful. The red crosses glowed bright against her white hull. Then the Zirathi ships appeared. Patricia watched the entire 8 minutes. She watched the torpedoes strike. She watched the hospital ship break apart. She watched escape pods being destroyed. She watched 753 people die. When it was over, she sat in silence for a long moment. Her hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. "Get me President Foster," she said quietly, "right now." 30 minutes later, Patricia was in a secure video conference with President Daniel Foster and the entire military leadership. General Brandon Cole of the Marine Corps was there. Fleet Admiral Nicole Grant of Strategic Operations, Director Helen Ross of Intelligence. They had all watched the footage. President Foster's face was hard as stone. "How certain are we that this footage is real?" 100% certain, sir," Patricia replied. "Multiple recording drones captured it. Our technical teams have verified the data. This is real. The Zirathi destroyed a clearly marked hospital ship conducting a humanitarian mission." General Cole leaned forward. "How many survivors?" 94, sir. Rescue ships reached them 3 hours ago. They're being treated now. And the rest? 753 dead, sir." The room fell silent. Everyone present had served in the military for decades. They had lost friends and colleagues over the years. But this was different. This was an attack on healers, on doctors and nurses who carried no weapons, people who had dedicated their lives to saving others. "What's the status of our fleet?" President Foster asked. Admiral Grant pulled up a tactical display. "We have 47 warships within striking distance of Zirathi space. We can have over 200 vessels assembled within 72 hours if we pull ships from other sectors." "Do it," Foster said. "I want every available ship ready to move." "Patricia, what about our special projects?" Patricia had been waiting for that question. "The Vengeance-class dreadnoughts are ready, sir. All 12 of them. They've been waiting for final approval to leave the shipyards. The Vengeance-class was humanity's secret. For 15 years, hidden shipyards beyond Pluto had been building warships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The dreadnoughts were massive, each one 3 times the size of a standard cruiser. They carried rail cannons capable of punching through any known armor. They had missile systems with plasma warheads that could melt through 6 meters of reinforced hull plating, and they had shield generators so powerful that conventional weapons simply bounced off. Humanity had built them in secret, telling the galaxy they were research stations or cargo facilities. The deception had worked perfectly. The other species thought humans were a minor military power, focused mainly on defense and exploration. That was about to change. "The Zirathi think we're weak," President Foster said. "They think they can murder our people without consequences. We're going to show them they're wrong. Patricia, you have full authorization to use whatever force is necessary." Yes, sir. The meeting lasted another hour as they planned the operation. When it was over, Admiral Patricia Lawson returned to her office and began making calls. Within minutes, orders were being transmitted across human space. Every warship received the same message. Report for immediate deployment. Priority Alpha 1. No exceptions. The news of the attack spread quickly. Earth Command couldn't keep it secret even if they wanted to. Too many people had family and friends aboard the Compassion. When the list of casualties was released, the reaction was immediate and explosive. Across Earth, across every human colony, people watched the footage of the attack. They watched the hospital ship die. They watched the escape pods being destroyed. The anger was universal. It didn't matter if you were from Asia or Europe or Africa or America. It didn't matter if you were civilian or military. Everyone felt the same burning rage. Protests erupted outside Zirathi embassies on a dozen worlds. On Mars, an angry crowd broke through security barriers and set fire to the Zirathi trade office. On Luna, the entire Zirathi diplomatic staff had to be evacuated for their own safety. The police and military had to work overtime to prevent riots from turning into massacres. 3 days after the attack, President Foster addressed a joint session of Congress and the Global Assembly. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth and every human colony in space. The room fell silent as he walked to the podium. Behind him, a massive screen showed a single image, the UHMS Compassion before the attack. Beautiful, peaceful, safe. Foster began to speak. His voice was calm but filled with steel. My fellow humans, 3 days ago, the Zirathi Collective committed an act that defies every law, every treaty, every moral principle that civilized species hold dear. They attacked a hospital ship. They murdered 753 doctors, nurses, and medical staff who were on a mission of mercy. These people carried no weapons. They threatened no one. They came only to heal and to help. He paused and pressed a button. The image changed to footage of the attack. The chamber remained silent as they watched the torpedoes strike. Some representatives wept openly. Others sat with clenched fists, their faces twisted with rage. When the footage ended, Foster continued. The Zirathi have claimed that the Compassion was in restricted military space. This is a lie. Haven's Rest is a human colony in neutral territory. Even if it were not, nothing justifies the murder of medical personnel. Nothing. He pressed another button. A new image appeared. The list of the dead. 753 names scrolled slowly across the screen. Each name represented a life, a family, dreams that would never be fulfilled. We have issued an ultimatum to the Zirathi Collective, Foster said. Surrender the commanders who ordered this attack. Pay reparations to the families of the dead. Submit to a full investigation by the Galactic Council. They have 48 hours to comply. The chamber erupted in applause, but Foster raised his hand for silence. If they refuse, he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, then we will show the Zirathi, and every species in this galaxy, that humanity does not forgive attacks on healers. We will show them that there are consequences for such actions. We will show them what we truly are. He looked directly at the camera, knowing his words were being broadcast across the entire galaxy. This will not stand. The applause was deafening. It lasted for 5 full minutes. When it finally died down, Foster walked off the podium and went directly to a secure command center deep underground. Admiral Lawson was waiting for him, along with the military leadership. The Zirathi have responded to our ultimatum, Lawson said. She played the audio message. A Zirathi voice, cold and arrogant, spoke through the translator. The human vessel was in violation of our territorial boundaries. The action taken was justified under our laws. We will make no apologies and pay no reparations. We reject your ultimatum completely. Foster nodded slowly. He had expected this response. The Zirathi were proud and aggressive. They would see any apology as weakness. Then we proceed with Operation Righteous Fury, he said. Admiral Lawson, you have command. Bring our people home. And make sure the Zirathi understand that this can never happen again. Yes, sir. Across human space, the fleet assembled. Warships that had been scattered across 100 systems converged on rally points. The 12 Vengeance-class dreadnoughts emerged from their hidden shipyards, their massive hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Ships built for one purpose. War, Commander Eric Shaw stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution and watched the fleet assemble around him. He was 42 years old with short black hair and cold blue eyes. He had joined the Navy 20 years ago. He had served on frigates, destroyers, and cruisers. He had been given command of the Retribution 2 years ago, spending months training his crew for a war that might never come. Now that war was here. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zerathi home system. They appeared without warning, bypassing every sensor station and early warning system the aliens had set up. One moment the system was peaceful. The next moment, over 300 human warships filled the space around them. On the bridge of the dreadnought Judgment, Admiral Patricia Lawson stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the tactical display. The Zerathi homeworld glowed blue and green on the screen, a beautiful planet that was home to over 6 billion aliens. Around it orbited dozens of space stations, shipyards, and defense platforms, and scattered throughout the system were the ships of the Zerathi 3rd Defense Fleet, 60 warships, cruisers, destroyers, and frigates. Among them were the 3 destroyers that had attacked the Compassion. Patricia's intelligence officers had identified them by their energy signatures. The ships had made no attempt to hide. Why would they? In Zerathi culture, destroying an enemy vessel was something to be proud of. "Open a channel to the entire system," Patricia ordered. "All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Channel open, ma'am." Patricia spoke clearly and slowly, knowing her words would be translated into dozens of languages. "People of the Zerathi Collective, this is Admiral Patricia Lawson of the United Earth Defense Force. 6 days ago, your military attacked and destroyed the UHMS Compassion, a clearly marked hospital ship on a humanitarian mission. 753 medical personnel were murdered. Doctors, nurses, people who came to save lives." She paused, letting her words sink in. Across the Zerathi system, millions of aliens were watching and listening. Some probably didn't even know the attack had happened. Their government had likely kept it quiet. "You fired on a hospital ship," Patricia continued. "You murdered the defenseless. You violated the oldest laws of civilization. We gave you a chance to make this right. You refused. Now we are here to show you the price of such actions. We are here to show the galaxy that humanity protects its own." On the other side of the system, the Zerathi 3rd Defense Fleet scrambled to respond. Admiral Kresh, the fleet commander, watched the human ships on his tactical display with growing alarm. He had commanded the fleet for 12 years. He had won battles against pirates and rebels. But he had never faced anything like this. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Over 300, sir," his tactical officer replied, his voice trembling, "including 12 dreadnought-class vessels. Our intelligence reports indicate these ships have never been seen before. We have no data on their capabilities." Kresh felt a cold knot form in his stomach. 300 ships. His fleet had 60. The humans had them outnumbered 5-1. But numbers weren't everything. Zerathi ships were tough and their crews were well-trained. All ships battle formation, prepared to engage the human fleet. On the Judgment, Patricia watched the Zerathi ships move into an attack formation. She had expected this. The Zerathi were proud warriors. They would never surrender without a fight. "All ships weapons free," she ordered. "Target the Zerathi 3rd Defense Fleet. Destroy them." Commander Eric Shaw sat in his command chair aboard the Retribution, watching his tactical display. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Megan Price, had already locked onto targets. She had specifically requested to target the destroyer that had fired first on the Compassion. Eric had approved her request without hesitation. "All weapons charged and ready, sir," Megan reported. "Fire when ready," Eric said quietly. The Retribution's main rail cannon fired. The weapon used magnetic fields to accelerate a solid projectile to a significant fraction of the speed of light. The projectile crossed the distance between the ships in seconds and struck the Zerathi destroyer's shields. The shields lasted for approximately half a second before shattering. The projectile punched through the destroyer's hull like it was made of paper. It went completely through the ship, entering at the bow and exiting at the stern. Everything in its path simply ceased to exist. The destroyer broke in half, both pieces tumbling through space. Explosions rippled through its interior as reactors lost containment. Within 30 seconds, the ship that had fired first on the Compassion was nothing but debris. "Target destroyed," Megan said softly. She looked at Eric and he nodded. They both knew someone aboard the Compassion. They both understood what this moment meant. All across the human fleet, similar scenes played out. The dreadnoughts fired their rail cannons and Zirathi ships died. The heavy cruisers launched missiles with plasma warheads and more ships exploded. The destroyers added their firepower, and the space between the two fleets lit up with weapons fire. The Zirathi 3rd Defense Fleet tried to fight back. They fired their plasma torpedoes and particle beams at the human ships. Some of their shots found targets. But the human shields were far stronger than anyone had expected. The weapons that should have torn through hulls simply dissipated harmlessly against the shield barriers. Admiral Kresh watched in horror as his fleet died. In the first 5 minutes of combat, he lost 20 ships. 20 ships destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The humans were barely even scratched. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships retreat to the inner system." But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet had positioned itself perfectly, cutting off every escape route, and they were relentless. Every Zirathi ship that tried to flee was targeted and destroyed. On the planet below, billions of Zirathi civilians watched the battle through telescopes and sensors. They saw their proud fleet being systematically annihilated. Many had supported the attack on the human hospital ship. Humans were soft, they had been told. Weak. Now they were learning the truth. Humans were not weak. They had simply been showing restraint. And now that restraint was gone. Commander Eric Shaw watched another Zirathi destroyer explode on his view screen. It was one of the 3 that had attacked the Compassion. 2 down, 1 to go. "Sir, the last destroyer from the attack group is attempting to flee toward the outer system," the tactical officer reported. "Plot an intercept course. Maximum speed." The Retribution broke away from the main fleet and chased the fleeing destroyer. The Zirathi ship was fast, but the human dreadnought was faster. Within minutes, they had caught up. "Target locked, sir," Megan said. Eric looked at the photo of his sister that he had placed on his console. She had been so proud when she got her assignment to the Compassion. She had sent him a message the day before the mission to Haven's Rest. She had been so excited about helping the colonists. "For the Compassion," Eric said quietly, "fire all weapons." The Retribution unleashed everything it had. Rail cannons, missiles, particle beams, plasma torpedoes. The overwhelming firepower struck the Zirathi destroyer from multiple angles simultaneously. The ship's shields collapsed instantly. Its hull crumpled like paper. Explosions tore through every deck. In less than 5 seconds, the ship was reduced to glowing fragments. Eric sat back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. It was done. All 3 destroyers that had attacked the Compassion were gone. But the mission wasn't over yet. Back at the main battle, the Zirathi 3rd Defense Fleet had been reduced to less than 15 ships. The survivors were scattered and disorganized. Admiral Kresh had lost his flagship. His second-in-command was dead. Most of his senior officers were dead. He sat in an escape pod, drifting among the wreckage of his fleet, watching the human ships move through the debris field. They weren't pursuing the escape pods. They weren't firing on survivors. They were simply ensuring that every warship was destroyed. 2 hours after the battle began, the Zirathi 3rd Defense Fleet ceased to exist. Every ship was either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Not a single human vessel had been lost. A few had taken damage, but nothing serious. Admiral Patricia Lawson stood on the bridge of the Judgment and looked at the tactical display. The fleet battle was over. Now came the second phase of the operation. "Begin bombardment of military installations," she ordered. "Shipyards, weapons factories, orbital defense platforms. Everything on the target list. But remember our rules of engagement. No civilian targets. I want 0 civilian casualties if possible." The human fleet moved into orbit around the Zirathi homeworld. From orbit, they could see the major cities, the military bases, the industrial centers. The Zirathi had built impressive defenses over the centuries. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Underground bunkers held missile batteries. It was a formidable defensive network. It took the human fleet 4 hours to dismantle it completely. Rail cannons struck the orbital platforms, reducing them to scrap metal. Precision missiles destroyed weapon factories without damaging the civilian buildings nearby. Particle beams carved through military bunkers deep underground. It was surgical and precise. The humans showed no mercy to military targets, but they carefully avoided hitting anything civilian. On the planet below, the Zirathi people watched their military infrastructure being systematically destroyed. Some were terrified, some were angry, but many were confused. Why weren't the humans bombing cities? Why weren't they killing civilians? If the Zirathi had won such a victory, they would have laid waste to enemy population centers. That was the way of war, but humans fought differently. As the sun set on the Zirathi homeworld, the bombardment ended. 3 weeks after the battle, Ambassador Lauren Mitchell walked through the halls of Concordia Station toward the Galactic Council chambers. She was 38 years old with the same dark hair and steady eyes as her brother had possessed. Captain Ryan Mitchell had been her older brother, and she had loved him dearly. Now he was gone, along with 752 others. And she was here to make sure their deaths meant something. Concordia Station floated in neutral space far from any star system. It was a massive structure, built cooperatively by 40 different species over the course of 50 years. The Galactic Council met here to discuss treaties, settle disputes, and maintain peace across known space. Lauren had attended many meetings here as Earth's ambassador, but never one like this. The council chambers were enormous, with seating for representatives from all 40 member species. As Lauren entered, she could feel the tension in the air. Some species looked at her with sympathy, others with fear, a few with barely concealed anger. The Zirathi delegation sat in their assigned seats, looking smaller than usual. Their military had been crushed. Their pride had been shattered. Their ambassador, a gray-skinned female named Vresh, looked old and tired. The council chairman, a being from a species called the Torathi, called the meeting to order. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and large eyes. This council recognizes Ambassador Lauren Mitchell of humanity. You may address the chamber. Lauren walked to the speaker's platform in the center of the room. She had prepared a speech, but as she looked around at all the alien faces watching her, she decided to speak from her heart instead. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today not just as Earth's ambassador, but as the sister of Captain Ryan Mitchell. My brother commanded the UHMS Compassion. He dedicated 20 years of his life to helping others. He saved thousands of lives across dozens of worlds. He never carried a weapon. He never hurt anyone. 3 weeks ago, he was murdered while performing a humanitarian mission. She paused, looking directly at the Zirathi delegation. My brother was not the only one who died. 753 people were on that ship. Doctors, nurses, medical technicians, support staff. The youngest was Amy Peterson, 24 years old. She survived. She had to watch her friends die. The oldest was Dr. Carl Henderson, 67 years old. He had been planning to retire next year and spend time with his grandchildren. Lauren activated a holographic display. It showed all 753 names along with photos. These were not soldiers. These were healers. They came in peace. They came to save lives. And they were murdered for it. The chamber was silent. Some representatives looked away, unable to meet her gaze. Others stared at the names scrolling past. We came to the stars believing in the Galactic Medical Convention, Lauren continued. We believed that hospital ships were sacred, that healers were protected by law and custom. For over 100 years, that belief held true, but the Zirathi collective shattered it in 8 minutes of senseless violence. Ambassador Vresh stood up, her voice shaking. We accept responsibility for what happened. It was wrong. It violated every principle we claim to hold. There are no words adequate to express our regret. Regret is not enough, Lauren said firmly. Actions have consequences. Your military attacked a hospital ship. Earth responded by destroying your third defense fleet and dismantling your military infrastructure. Some species in this chamber think we went too far. Some think we were justified. I am not here to debate that today. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as she could. I am here to ensure this never happens again. The Galactic Medical Convention has existed for centuries, but it has no teeth. There are no enforcement mechanisms. There are no consequences for violations. That must change. The Torathi chairman leaned forward. What exactly is humanity proposing? Lauren displayed a document on the holographic screen. We propose amendments to the Galactic Medical Convention. First, any attack on a clearly marked medical vessel will be considered a war crime, subject to investigation and prosecution. Second, the victim species will have the right to demand the extradition of those responsible. Third, any species that protects war criminals who attacked medical vessels will face sanctions from the entire galactic community. She paused, letting the words sink in. And finally, humanity requests the authority to protect medical vessels anywhere in known space. Not just our own ships, but medical vessels from any species. We propose creating a dedicated fleet of escort ships that will accompany hospital ships on dangerous missions. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the proposal immediately. Others were hesitant, worried about giving humanity too much power. A few openly objected, seeing it as a human power grab. The debate lasted for hours. Lauren answered questions, addressed concerns, and negotiated compromises. By the end of the session, a vote was scheduled for the following week. As Lauren left the chamber, Ambassador Vresh approached her. The Zarathi looked old and broken. "Ambassador Mitchell, I want you to know that the commanders responsible for the attack have been arrested. They are being held for trial. We will not protect them." Lauren looked at the alien who represented the species that had killed her brother. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to hate. But Vresh looked genuinely remorseful, and Lauren could see the weight of guilt in her eyes. "Your people made a terrible mistake," Lauren said quietly. "But you're taking responsibility for it. That matters. It doesn't bring back my brother, but it matters." 1 week later, the Galactic Council voted on the amendments to the Medical Convention. The vote was 37 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. The amendments passed. Hospital ships now had real protection, backed by enforceable laws and consequences for violations. Back on Earth, construction began on a new class of escort frigates, specifically designed to protect medical vessels. They were fast, well-armed, and had orders to respond to any threat with overwhelming force. The first 12 ships were named after the months of the year. The lead ship was called the January. At Arlington National Cemetery, a new memorial was unveiled. It was a long wall of black granite stretching for over 100 meters. On it were carved the names of all 753 people who had died aboard the Compassion. At the center of the wall was a simple inscription: "They came to heal. We came to avenge. Their light shall never be forgotten." Thousands of people attended the dedication ceremony. Families of the dead, military personnel, ordinary citizens who wanted to pay their respects. Among them were the 94 survivors. Amy Peterson stood in front of the wall looking for the names of her friends. She found them one by one: Jake Collins, who had saved 30 children; Lieutenant Danny Wright, who had pulled her into that emergency escape pod; Dr. Lisa Brennan, who had tried so hard to save everyone. A hand touched her shoulder gently. Amy turned to see an older woman with kind eyes. "You were on the Compassion?" "Yes, ma'am. I was a nurse in Ward 7. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My son was aboard, Dr. Paul Henderson." "Did you know him?" Amy remembered Paul. He had worked in Ward 4. He had always been cheerful, always had a joke to lighten the mood during long shifts. "I knew him. He was a good doctor, a good person." The two women stood together in front of the memorial, sharing their grief. All around them, similar conversations were happening. Strangers connecting through loss, finding comfort in shared pain. President Foster spoke at the ceremony. His words carried live to every human colony in space. "We gather here today to remember those who died doing what humanity does best: helping others, healing the sick, bringing hope to those in despair. The crew of the Compassion embodied the best of what we are." He paused, looking at the long wall of names. "But we also gathered to remember what happened when they were attacked. We showed the galaxy that humanity has two faces. We are healers and we are warriors. We prefer peace, but we are capable of terrible violence when pushed. Let no one mistake our kindness for weakness. Let no one think that our desire for peace means we will accept injustice. The Compassion will never sail again. Her name has been retired forever in honor of those who died. But dozens of new hospital ships are being built. They carry the names of the fallen: the Ryan Mitchell, the Lisa Brennan, the Jake Collins, the Susan Shaw. Each ship is a promise that we will continue the work that the Compassion's crew began. We will heal. We will help. We will bring light to dark places. And we will never forget." On the other side of the galaxy, the automated beacon still orbited the Zarathi homeworld. It broadcast its message continuously, day and night, a constant reminder of what had happened. The 753 names scrolled past over and over, never ending. Young Zarathi children looked up at the beacon and asked their parents what it meant. The parents, many of them still ashamed of what their species had done, explained. They told their children about the hospital ship, about the humans who came to heal, about the terrible mistake their military had made, Remember this, the parent said. Remember that healers are sacred. Remember that kindness should not be mistaken for weakness. Remember the names. 5 years after the attack, the first of the new escort frigates, the